Hello, everyone. I am here to share with the world some knowledge with a connection of mine, Sal Alexander, with Quader Bookkeeping. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Quader Bookkeeping. Basically, I'm Jen Carpenter, and I want to be a resource to people that are building their business, growing their business, launching their business, and share resources to support, inspire, impact, and help those around me that I have connections with. So I'm here to have Sal talk to us about bookkeeping and give you some tips on red flags to avoid, how you should use a bookkeeper and a CPA in your business. And we're just going to go through some questions and add value together here. So I'll have Sal introduce herself a little bit more about kind of why she does what she does a little bit too, and why this topic is important to business owners to have our services in place and support each other. So thank you, Sal, for joining me.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here and get to know you even better and work with you. Um, I have had a background in entrepreneur and freelancing, and because of that, and because of some of the situations I ran into, I learned that bookkeeping is a very important part of knowing where your business is and reaching your goals and making sure that you're accomplishing your mission.
So you said that this came to light for you when you said to yourself, should I really be doing my own taxes? Should someone do their own taxes? And if, how can this affect them if they have some issues as to where you come into play to help them with bookkeeping?
I always did my own taxes until I was audited. And at that point, I decided the stress of having to face an auditor without having somebody to advocate for you was not a stress that I wanted to deal with. And especially in the environment that we're in right now, I would not recommend it. Knowing that there is someone else who is making sure that the books are accurate, and especially a CPA or a lawyer who are able to talk to the IRS and hold some weight, are really important, especially in this environment.
Definitely, I would agree. Being stressed out and worried is not a fun time. So having resources in place is extremely important, and that's exactly what this is all about. So what's kind of the big difference of having a bookkeeper and a CPA? I want you to highlight how you're important and a little bit about how you and a CPA work together, but how you're both important in a business.
Well, I know I just talked with somebody the other day who had a CPA, and for their taxes, they got a separate bill. And the bill for the CPA to hire a bookkeeper to get the accounts ready to do the taxes was more than what the CPA charged to actually do the taxes. So you will be paying for a bookkeeper, whether you intend to or not. And it is way more cost effective for
Wow.
you to choose your bookkeeper so that you're not paying the CPA the overhead of hiring and monitoring, doing all the things that they do when they employ their own bookkeepers. The other advantage that I really see is that a CPA is like the architect, and the bookkeeper is like the builder. So the CPA is really great when you're doing high level stuff like, tax strategy, which corporation structure should I use, what tax advantages should I be implementing, how should I buy this asset, this year for tax purposes, or things like that, the large things. The CPA is excellent for, and we defer to the CPAs. We work with CPAs because they are the ones that should make those decisions. But each CPA also is a person, and they have their own risk tolerance. So some CPAs might say, "Oh yeah, take the home office deduction," and other CPAs may have had bad experiences with it and say, "Nah, I don't want to go to an audit and try to defend that to an IRS agent. So, they're all people. But what we do is the day-to-day stuff. So we make sure that the tax strategies and the goals that have been set out by the CPA are implemented on the day-to-day level. And bookkeepers, I just talked with someone yesterday whose bookkeeper found a $40,000 mistake that they couldn't locate it. I think the last time I talked to her was about a month ago, and they finally found it. It was the bank that, for whatever reason, double charged them on this one thing, and it took the bookkeeper to find out exactly where that mistake was, and that it really was the bank's mistake that they paid this thing twice. A CPA does not get down to that kind of detail.
That is all amazing, valuable tips and real life examples, saving the time and the money by having a bookkeeper. Whereas, I know a CPA that uses a bookkeeper as well, but I didn't know that it cost so much, for him to utilize the bookkeeper. So saving everybody more time and money is extremely valuable. And that's a perfect example right there that you just used about having the bookkeeper to know and not miss something like that was an extremely large mistake. So huge, huge value in that right there. Thank you. What is the audit of a Schedule C like? So for those that may be dealing with that's a concern of a business owner. So with a Schedule C audit, what are they going to see? What's going to happen with that?
Well, I personally know of a few people who've had audits. I've had one myself, and you're just talking to another person. It's like talking a little bit to a police officer. Okay. So you don't want to volunteer information. You want to be respectful and polite. But you also need to know that they are not necessarily there for your benefit.
Okay.
And even though mine was pleasant and ended up well, I would not today go to an audit without representation. I know at least for me, I was in the beginning stages, and I had a shoebox. And this goes back into how to prepare for an audit.
Yes.
I had a shoebox, and one of the things that I did was every line item I had an envelope for. So I had all of the receipts for that line item in an envelope. And I literally brought the shoebox. You want to make sure you bring everything that you might need to verify any questionable items. And he looked at the shoebox and picked an envelope and said, okay, let's do this one. And we went through those receipts 3 times. None of the times did we get the same answer that I had on that line item, but we never got the same answer twice. So he said, okay, that's good enough. We're going to stop on this.
Wow.
So you are dealing with people. It doesn't have to be scary, but I know I don't want to go through that again. And
alone for that matter. So yeah.
I definitely do not want to go through that alone. And but you live through it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, I had no idea what it entails. So this was physically in person with a shoebox of receipts. Like that's how that's going to go. One way or another, they're going to want every piece of information, and at least you had whatever they needed prepared for that particular envelope they happened to choose.
Yes. And now things are a little different because that was decades ago. And now there's a good chance you'll get a mail audit. And so there's like a couple different kinds of audit. You can have them take just one line item or a couple line items on your Schedule C, and they'll email you, they'll mail you and say, we have questions about these line items. And then you give them the documentation that they requested, nothing more. It's like the Miranda rights. And so that's one of the ways that they could do it. Another way that they could do it is in person, like mine was. And in person, it might again be, just a line item or two, or it might be the whole Schedule C form, or it could be the entire thing.
Wow.
Maybe they're looking to see, how organized are your books? Is this really a hobby that you're trying to pass off as a business?
Yeah.
Do you really sound like you're a business person? And they want to, there's some things that aren't financial that they want to know from you.
Yeah. So even as a whole, whether it's in person or, either way, you want to be prepared that you're going to have, need everything you need for that one line item or the whole thing, to be prepared for that's a possibility. Any other tips to
Absolutely.
be prepared for? You said, what kinds of documents do I need to keep for this situation? And yeah, I think that'd be the next place to go with certain things. You said receipts, anything else specifically for the Schedule C in general?
The Schedule C in general, usually what's best is if you have your balance statement and your profit and loss. Balance statement means your assets and your liabilities. So if you have your bank and credit card items and the loan agreements, any of those kinds of things that you might need, the profit and loss or the income statement is all of your income, all of your expenses. There is a debate about whether receipts are necessary or not. And as I was getting ready for this and looking through some other people's opinions, I actually ran across a bookkeeper who had a video on the front page that said, receipts, I read the IRS code and nowhere does it say receipts.
Okay.
Well, that may be true. This goes back to risk tolerance. If you have that kind of risk tolerance, go for it.
Yes.
I don't. Part of the reason I don't is because we work both with Canadian and American businesses, and in part because of that, we know that Americans IRS is pretty lax about looking for those receipts, but there seems to be a movement, especially with the extra money that they've been given now, to be to kind of gear into that more. So maybe you can't find a line item that says receipts are required, but I do know that there are people who have gone to audits that when they didn't have a receipt, that expense was no longer allowed. I personally, as a bookkeeper, encourage all of my clients, if you have a receipt, give it to us so that we can put it into the into that expense, so it is forever attached to that expense and it cannot be lost. So that's my take on it.
Huge. So speaking of filing systems, as a bookkeeper, you can be the one that we just send the documents to you and you keep track of it for us.
Yes.
One less thing to do.
Yes.
Either way, any other particular filing systems or anything else, ways to keep things handy themselves or other than you handling it for them?
We have found, well, like I mentioned before, a shoebox can work if it's an organized shoebox. However, if people are coming to us, it would be easier if it was something other than a shoebox. And there are lots of accounting systems out there for free that people start out using. If you're using one of those in the beginning, one of the things that I would specifically look for is an export to CSV file or export, some sort of export. The export is the ones that we've checked the exports on is not much more than a bank statement. It doesn't categorize. So you're not really gaining anything over a shoebox, except that you're not paying somebody to type in the information.
Aha, there you go. Perfect. So just to leave us with a few more tips here, when should a company consider other tax forms or structures for their business if necessarily, you start looking closer at things, a 1099 and, LLC versus S Corp, that's a whole nother topic, but to really kind of look at when that situation may change. And then also we're going to leave some tips for red flags if you have red flags to be possibly audited by IRS with a few tips for that.
Yeah, and those kind of go hand in hand. If you're
Yes.
in a situation where your a Schedule C might give red flags, you're probably in a situation where you need to consider some other corporate structure. Some of the red flags, and again, different people, different bookkeepers, different CPAs will have different points of view on this. Um, I know personally of one person who has $1 million going through their Schedule C. Um,
Well,
I also know that their new CPA went through the books and said, "Do you know how much money you've left on the table all these years?"
right.
um, most of the time, what I've been seeing is around $100,000 seems to be the breaking point when you're better off getting out of Schedule C and
Okay.
into some other kind of corporation. Um, and there are variables around that, but once you start at 80,000, right around in there,
Okay.
uh, you you might want to find a really wonderful CPA who will do your taxes several different ways and tell you which is the best way to
Okay.
file. Too little money can also be an issue. The IRS only allows 3 years of losses for every 5 years. So
Okay.
if you are in your fourth year of losses and you have had um, no profit during that time, you probably don't want to file. Or if it's something that's dear to your heart, maybe you want to start moving into a charity rather than a
Oh,
Schedule C.
okay.
Um, some some CPAs say that it's okay to have payroll with a Schedule C. Other CPAs will not do that, interpret the law differently. So that would be a question to ask. And another thing that's really important is, where is your personal income in terms of your tax category? If you're
Yes.
on the high end of a tax category and you file Schedule C, you could end up pushing your personal income over into the next category and actually hurting yourself.
Yes,
And you
definitely.
want to avoid that.
I know that has come across as well. And when you start to factor all that in, you have to look at both sides of everything, your personal budget, your personal expenses, your business expenses and income, all your, like you said, your assets and liabilities, and side by side, take a close look at all of that. Well, this has been amazing. I really appreciate all your fantastic tips to help business owners, entrepreneurs, again, people starting off in their business. It's just as important to have a bookkeeper by your side as you start to grow and learn. And then I think it too saves you money in the big picture, so you can actually grow faster when the time is right to have these great resources to help you in your business. So I would love for anyone who's checking this out to connect with Sal Alexander on LinkedIn, and myself as well, John Carpenter. I help businesses by having less worry and stress in their business to be able to have affordable legal representation to protect their family and their business. So I'll be putting out a series of at least once a month, meeting with other great people that are resources to business owners. So I hope this has been super valuable to you all today. And I look forward to connecting with you all on LinkedIn, or just reach out to one of us if you have any other questions or anything else we could do to help you after the video here today. So thank you so much for your time.